we go. We were, this is my exchange. I was an exchange student to Oaxaca, Mexico, 1983, 1984. And there were 3 Rotary exchange students. This is Trish. She was from Yukon Territory. She now lives in Calgary. This is Vicki. She was from Brantford, Ontario. And she now lives in kind of near still near the Toronto area. The 3 of us were 3 little peas in a pod. I am still in very close contact with both of them. I consider them my sisters, and it's just neat. I mean, as other people have shared about their exchanges, it's so, it's just so nice to have these long-term friends that have experienced the same thing, you know, that you did in the same time period. So, so here's Oaxaca. Has anyone been to Oaxaca by chance? And I'm going through, this is very southern Mexico. So just for points of reference, Cancun, Acapulco, Puerto Vallarta, Cabo, some of the common places. Oaxaca is about halfway between Mexico City and the Guatemalan border. It's high in the mountains. It's sort of one of those cities of eternal spring because the weather is always kind of perfect. The state, so Oaxaca is a city, it's also a state. The state of Oaxaca has some beautiful beaches on the southern coast, kind of as you're nearing the Guatemalan border. And this is Oaxaca. So, you know, I came from Shakopee, farming community, and this is what I flew into. You know, this literally looked like I could have taken this out of the plane window when I was arriving. High in these, you know, Sierra Madre mountains of southern Mexico. You know, pretty secluded at the time, no major freeways going there, 9 hours from Mexico City, which is now a 4-hour drive on a new superhighway. You know, Oaxaca is one of the poorer states in Mexico, but filled with culture and color and ancient Zapotec ruins and, you know, these famous markets. I meant to have a slide in here about a photo of the delicacy of Oaxaca, which are boiled grasshoppers. Boiled grasshoppers that you kind of eat. They're kind of a, well, I wouldn't say candy, but just something to munch on. So, but they are the tourists usually, you know, they will offer them to you for free in the market because they know that most people won't go anywhere near them. But just, you know, you notice all these colors, and the food is, you know, Oaxaca's really known, well, today especially, culinary schools, cooking classes, you know, really top chefs from Mexico that had made their home in Oaxaca. In 83, 84, you know, I would say that Mexico was arguably sort of coming out of, not exactly a dictatorship, but, you know, not free and fair elections, and kind of Oaxaca was a very depressed area. That has all changed now. Oaxaca today is tourist destination, and, you know, these art classes and artisans. It's where mezcal is made, if anyone is a mezcal fan, from these agave bushes. And then there's all this old, you know, awesome architecture. I think the year I was there was fairly close to the city's 500th anniversary. So, you know, Spaniards settled centuries and centuries ago, and so much of this is earthquake zone as well. So, you know, these buildings have stood the test of time. Again, with the colors, you know, the native, I use the term Indians only because that's what Mexican culture calls the Native or First Nation people. So I will say the Indians of southern Mexico are just, you know, each village has their craft and their typical dress and all the rest. And, you know, this is basically, I found this on Google, of course, but this could be any window almost in the city. I mean, you know, you look out and you see these just beautiful mountains, and coming from Chaco, you know, it was about as different. I was kind of disappointed when I got my Rotary letter on exchange, that, you know, you get your big letter, you're going, and my friends were going to Sweden and Norway and the Philippines, and I was going to Mexico. But over time, I've come to think that you could hardly pick a more, a culturally more different experience, just so different than I think what I grew up with. And I so appreciate it. And the other thing I totally appreciate is the proximity to the US. I've probably been back to Mexico, I don't know, in 38 years, I've probably been back 50 times. I mean, and you know, my sister was an exchange student to Denmark through Rotary and has not been back a single time. So there are these benefits that I came to really appreciate. This is my first host family, and in Mexico, the family name is last name of the dad, last name of the mom. So my first family was Ramirez Tenorio. The dad was an orthopedic doctor. The mother's family, who I'll introduce you to, owned the only private hospital in the city. This was a medical family. The brothers and sisters were doctors and dentists, Rotarians. You'll notice even in the living room photo here, as I was putting this together, crystal chandeliers and very nice furniture and all the rest. This is not how I grew up. So this was kind of similar to Greg's presentation a couple of weeks ago. This was a bit of a shock, not a shock to me, but just, unexpected. It was unexpected to me what the family that I landed in. This is kind of the back of the house. This front of the house, this is my host sister, Amelia. She was a couple of years older than me. My host brother, Manuel, who was exactly my age. My host brother, Carlos. There was one brother in between that was in Ohio on exchange during my year. Enrique, and this is Carlos with my dog, or their dog. And then, so I grew up, there's 4 kids in my family. I'm the oldest, but we're all within 4.5 years. So all of these, these were, new siblings in a way, but they were the same ages as my brothers and sisters, basically. And then we came to Juan Jose. Juan Jose was 5 years old when I arrived, and I had never really been around a small kid like this. And this dude was my buddy. Man, he crawled all over me, and we watched TV together, and he helped me with my Spanish, and would just laugh and laugh and laugh. And it was just a really, he's a great kid. He is now one of the only urologists following in the medical tradition of the extended family in southern Mexico. So, and I think he just turned 40. So, with exchange, you live with the family, but you inherit an extended family as well, just like, you would here. So this is my host mom and my host dad. This is my host grandma, and she was the matriarch of the family. These are the other aunts and uncles. These 2 were doctors. I'm still in contact. Well, with those that are still alive, I should say. My host dad died 2 years after my exchange. Really young, 49 years old, I think. Anyway, this family they reminded me of mine. I have a very close-knit family. We do all holidays together, and that was this family. Just a miscellaneous photo of myself out with those beautiful mountains in the background again. Well, one other thing I'll say about this area of Mexico, half the year is dry season, and that is kind of like, the winter and really dry. And then the rainy season comes, and had I taken this 6 months later, everything would have been like as green could be. So it's kind of a neat place. Kirk, I see a couple of texts. I'm going to ignore those, and I just assume this is people going back and forth. But if you want to communicate anything with me, just take the mic off. So I've also had the chance to go back to Oaxaca, in particular, 7 times. This was taken 7 years ago with my host mom. My host mom is also, and why I really wanted to put this picture in, is also declining with memory loss and Alzheimer's disease. So kind of apropos, but doing well. Okay, so let's see. This is my second host mom. This family was Abascal Cordero, so the dad's name was Abascal, mom's name was Cordero, Abascal Cordero. Search as I might, I could not find a picture of Rafael, my host dad. Rafael was a strange sort of guy. He was kind of a hermit and kind of was, he was quirky. We really got along well, and I just wish I had a photo of him. This was my host mom, Elizabeth. She went by a nickname of Chickies. She and I were best of buds. We would stay up at the kitchen table evenings almost every night that I lived with them. I only had two host families, first half of the year and second half of the year. And one, over the years, I talk about how exchange is so much different from study abroad. Study abroad, yes, you're in a country, but you're living with other students and you're going out or going for the weekends, traveling Europe or whatever. And with exchange, you're part of the family and you are there and they're with you and you're with them, and an evening is a cup of coffee at the kitchen table. And that is what I will always remember my host mom for. These are my two host sisters. My host brother was in Iowa. This is the host brother that was in Iowa. This is my house. So in contrast to the first house, this is pretty modest. 3 bedrooms, and this was the living room. Colorful, but not super fancy. But I so appreciated both families for kind of different reasons. This is my front yard. This is what I would pass on my way to school in the morning. And this was the top of my house with these new kittens that we'd had. Again, the mountains in the background. And why I'm sitting on my roof is that in Oaxaca, still to this day, are real, acute water shortages. We lived on the very edge of town at the time in the southern part of the city. And literally the water, like my host mom would always say, we turn on the valve and the water doesn't come out. And so when the water came out, it was up to me to crawl onto the roof and open the cistern and get she wasn't climbing up there and I was happy to do it. And it was kind of neat because of the view that you would get. But, you hear about water shortages around the world, and I was under strict orders. I had a shower every day, but the big joke with my host mom was muy poca agua, very little water. So this was 4th of July in my exchange year. And why I put this in is not for patriotic reasons or anything, but to tell you that when I was in Mexico, I contracted typhoid. And I hauled my butt out of bed on 4th of July and held this flag in my backyard, but I was in some rough shape. I was hospitalized a couple of days in the hospital that my extended, first family owned. So I was well taken care of, and, what do you say? It's a risk of going on exchange. I had all of my vaccinations before I went. I don't think typhoid was one of them. Hepatitis, so you do what you can do, but I live to tell. But let's see. This was a return visit to my second host family, also 7 years ago during our class reunion, my host mom, my host sister, and her son. And then just some pictures of the city. This is the main square, the Zocalo. Every Mexico or Latin American town really has one. It's where everything happens. I would walk to this main square every single day of my exchange. It was it was just the thing I did in the afternoon and the evenings. I would meet other exchange students, other classmates, have a coffee, walk around the square, kind of something to do. This Day of the Dead, which I think everyone has heard about, why I wanted to put this in is that it was very special for me because, Day of the Dead is sort of the remembrance and praying for and thinking about your relatives who have passed away. But in Mexico, the celebration, and I'm not sure if this is the case all over Latin America, but in Mexico, Day of the Dead celebrations are held at night in the cemetery. So you go to the cemetery with candles and flowers, and you bring the favorite food of your family member that has passed away. So if grandpa really liked tamales, you brought tamales. And so this is a party. You got, I mean, a respectful, of course, you know, being there for your relatives as well. But this is, you go from grave to grave, you see neighbors, they offer you food. You guys, it is the neatest experience. And I hope again in my life that I'm able to be there. It's held November 1st and November 2nd, generally corresponds to like our All Souls Day, if you will. Okay, look at this. What can you guess what this is? This is a radish. What, number one, have you ever seen such a big radish? I have not. Number two, why? What is special about radishes in Oaxaca? Well, drum roll, it's the Radish Festival on Christmas Eve. The Radish Festival on Christmas Eve in Oaxaca. I don't know if you can see all of these booths, but this goes all the way around the square. This is one side of this four-sided square. And people carve radishes into these crazy scenes. It's, you know, I don't even know how to describe it. Look at the size of this thing. It was a unique thing about Oaxaca. The other big festival in Oaxaca comes in July, and it's a big dance festival. Oaxaca, because it's the capital of the state, is where once a year everyone comes for this big dance festival. And the only thing I can compare it to is the state fair. Everybody is there. Everyone from their region brings their, it's sort of like bringing the cows from all over the country or all over the state into the state fair. This is all based off of dancing. The 8 different regions of Oaxaca each have their own traditional dance. They have their own products. They bring their products, kind of like a state fair giveaway. When they're done with the traditional dance, they throw the, you know, if they make rugs, they'll have all of these small rugs that they'll throw out as sort of gifts into the crowd. But it can get a little dangerous. This happens every day for like 9 days. And when the actual dance festivals are not going on, literally people from the villages around the state of Oaxaca go into the streets. And so you'll be walking and there'll just be these parades. Really incredible, you guys. But this is the most famous of all of the regional dances, and it's the pineapple dance. And it goes to a particular song, and it's so colorful and so wonderful. But remember, you throw the regional product into the crowd once you're done dancing. So what do they throw in? They whip these pineapples into the crowd. People, if you are not looking, you know, people will get smashed in the heads by pineapples and coconuts and whatnot. Really fun. So I'll leave you with one more of the mountains because I'm a mountain fan. So that was supposed to be 5 slides, and it ended up being, it was really fun putting it together. So I will move on to Alzheimer's, but if you have any questions about my exchange while I'm getting this set up, I'm happy to answer a few.
John, this is Greg. You mentioned that the ruins or the temples, hi Johanna, were from a native tribe that I've never heard of before. Could you explain that tribe to us?
Yeah, I mean, there's southern, so Mexico, you know, just in general, the Aztec Indians, which everyone's heard of, are sort of central Mexico, more by Mexico City. And the Mayans are more like Yucatan going into Central America. But in between were 2 prominent Indian cultures from the state of Oaxaca, the Zapotecs and the Olmecs, I think. But it was the Zapoteca Indians that, you know, they discovered the ruins, and not as large as the Aztec ruins or the Mayan ruins, but yeah, just a regional group of, you know, Indians that I think the culture survives today, but like the other ruins, you know, they were abandoned hundreds of years ago for unknown reasons.
Thank you.
Hey, Stephanie. Hey, Sam. Hi, Joe.
What a great, John, what a great presentation. So you were, when you started speaking, I thought that, and I came a couple minutes late, I thought you were in a smaller town. You were in the big city.
Oaxaca was 200,000 at the time. So, you know, what's 200,000? Madison, Wisconsin, maybe.
Oh,
It's grown. And one of the hard things for me is when I'm back is I love all of the new rooftop restaurants and all of this stuff that was not there, language schools and cooking classes, like all of this great stuff. But it's come at a price, and the price has been that the population has at least doubled and the traffic is horrible, just awful. But you know, it's just not the relative small place that I lived in. Then again, neither is Shakopee. You know, Shakopee is unrecognizable to one I grew up there. So thank you.
nice.
Anything else? All right, let's move on to presentation number 2. All right, so this, you know, this presentation is about Alzheimer's and dementia and this approach to care called the CARES approach. I am, as a bit of background, I have to move my Zoom thing out of the way here. Kind of my story on how I got into Alzheimer's, which people are often interested in, is I'm professionally a programmer and an educator. And I got into what we now call online training early in the 90s. I've done projects at University of Minnesota and West Publishing, which is now Thomson Reuters, which is probably something else. And, you know, on many different organizations. One of the projects I did was at Department of Veterans Affairs here in Minneapolis in '96. And it just happened to be around Alzheimer's disease. As an educator and as a programmer, you know, in '96, it was just another project. It was, I did a project for the agriculture department at the U one time on egg candling and determining the egg quality. You know, something someone needed education on, and so be it. I founded a company, Healthcare Interactive, my company in '97. I got another project with the VA in conjunction with the Alzheimer's Association and University of Minnesota. And was about to start on a third one in '99, and I started to notice the signs of decline, which we would now say today, the signs of memory decline or Alzheimer's decline or dementia decline in my grandmother. And it was really surreal because, you know, I'd worked with, at this point, 3 years, let's say, with this national team of experts. You know, you're developing this training, you learn what's being taught. So I had learned quite a bit about Alzheimer's disease in those first couple of projects. And sort of, you know, we had done some filming, I'd just seen things. And all of a sudden this was happening with my grandma Therese there on the bottom. So 4 or 5 years later, she passed away. And by that time, I think it was on my 4th Alzheimer's project. And it went from something interesting or just another project to kind of a passion and a desire to want to make a difference. So it's, you know, the millennials, they say, are always about wanting to make a difference. I'm not a millennial, but I think I was before my time. It just really called to me. There's something about it. Money didn't matter. I just wanted to try to make a difference. You know, it occurred to me when working on these VA projects that there are all of these national experts that were convening literally at, you know, Minneapolis. Greg, where's the VA? Like Minnehaha and 54th, is it? More or less.
It's about a half-mile south of here.
About a half-mile south of your house. And, you know, people in the neighborhood, if you had a family member, you would have no access to the information. So that was kind of how the company got started. In 2006, this CARES program that I'll talk about was created. So what our company does today, 20 years later, is online dementia care training, certification, credentialing. And we kind of break our audiences into three groups: organizations like a nursing home or assisted living, home care, hospital looking to train staff to provide better care, meet state requirements, et cetera, et cetera. Individuals looking to improve their resume, make their job easier, et cetera, et cetera. And then family members. So we operate in these three different areas, but the core information is really the same no matter who you're talking to. So I'll go over some of that today. So I want to start with, before I get into this approach, just some basics on Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And apologies if some of you know this already, have heard this already, if this is a review, but these are, I think, the basic concepts that if someone asks me about Alzheimer's and dementia that I usually talk about. And, the number one is, that I'll just start with is the brain. We think of Alzheimer's and dementia as memory loss, but I was surprised to learn that the brain physically changes. So, the healthy brain is sort of, it's full, and I was at a conference about 10 years ago, and the University of Minnesota had a booth where you could hold a healthy brain and a brain with Alzheimer's disease. It was so fascinating and interesting. And you'll notice on the brain with Alzheimer's, literal holes, and I think we'll talk about behavior in a bit, and we'll talk about, frustrations for families and whatnot. I think it's really helpful, just as a huge basic concept, to realize that the brain is physically changing, and this person is not being obstinate and difficult on purpose. So that's concept number one I wanted to share with you. Break into the presentation at any point if you have a question. There's 30 slides here. So if you have something on a particular slide, please just take yourself off of mute and ask.
John, can I just ask a quick question? Is that how many years of Alzheimer's has this brain experienced?
Yeah, thanks for that. The typical people once diagnosed, I think the average length of time after diagnosis before someone would typically or on average pass away is a few years, 2 or 3 years. But this is going on for quite a long time. If I would just have to, I always say I'm an educator. I'm not a biologist or a neuropsychologist or anything. But if I had to look at this, I would say 10 years. Mm-hmm. This could happen over this period of 10 years with Alzheimer's disease. I'll talk a little bit more about the differences between Alzheimer's and dementia on the next slide. But let's just say this isn't happening overnight, for sure.
Thank you.
One of the big questions that I get a lot is, what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? So think of dementia as an umbrella term, and think of it as symptoms: the memory loss, forgetting names, confused about this, maybe getting lost, maybe wandering. These are the symptoms. And the professional community calls this dementia. Under dementia, though, it's an umbrella term, and there are, depending on who you talk to, 100 forms of dementia, 200 forms of dementia, 400 forms of dementia. There are a lot of forms or diseases that can cause these symptoms. So dementia is just this general term. Grandma has dementia. That means she has these symptoms. Not able to maybe follow a recipe anymore, forgetting names, etc. What causes that? That's where the diseases come in, or the forms. So Alzheimer's disease is the most common. By some estimates, up to 80% of all dementia is caused by Alzheimer's disease. Of the 200, 100, 200, 400, depending on what source you're looking at, these on the bottom, these 8, make up the vast majority of the remainder. So if 80% of dementias are Alzheimer's disease, these 8, many of which you've seen or heard of, make up the vast majority of the other 20%. The other forms are just really, really rare genetic, in general, conditions. So what I tell people is, if your friend or relative has memory issues, and if they are not getting worse really quickly, if this is kind of a slow progression, almost certainly it's Alzheimer's disease. Whether or not a medical professional would tell you that or not, whether your doctor tells you it's Alzheimer's or not, if you're not, for example, I had an employee whose husband actually had this one on the bottom, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, also known as mad cow disease. He was perfectly fine. He had a headache at work one day. By the next week, he wasn't working. And within 2 months, he had passed away. That's not Alzheimer's. That is something that's a crash and burn, really rapid progression. Parkinson's, characterized by movement in conjunction with impact on the brain. So these are, each has their FTD, frontal temporal, FTLD or FTD it can be characterized with some really bizarre behavior. But in general, I'm back up here to the 80%. If your family member or friend is getting forgetful, and this is not really changing, like we haven't crashed and burned in 6 weeks here, this is just getting worse over time, it's get a diagnosis. I'm not a medical professional, all of those disclaimers, but that would be the characteristic of Alzheimer's disease. Thick, dense slide. Any questions before I go to the next? All right. Other thing people ask about are medications. Medications have started to come along. Most of the current medications prior to August of this year treated the symptoms. So they would treat maybe the observable memory loss. They would treat some of the confusion. The person would seem better, but the person would not be better. The person would still progress at the same rate that they normally would. But the medications were, one good reason for early diagnosis, if this is a suspected issue for families, is that there are medications that can really help. It can really make the person's life, more normal, if you will, or, have things be and remain happier and without as much conflict. But that progression over time has not changed. However, there was just an FDA-approved drug, which you may have read about in August, that for the first time is having a treatment effect on Alzheimer's disease. Brand new. It, I think, was researched and developed in the UK. We'll hear much more about it. Again, I always say, I'm an educator, so I don't have all the particulars about the medication. One comment though about a cure, at this point, a cure there is no cure. Someday there'll be a cure. When I did my very first program with the VA in 1996, we were talking about someday when there's a cure. Well, here we are, 25 years later, and still no cure. The first, we had a chart way back when that said, the first thing we just need to do is halt the progression. If we can get to where there's a drug that just, here's your decline, and you get to this point, you get on a drug, and now this is as bad as it gets for the next 20 years, that would be monumental, and we're still not there. I think we have one now that if we can even start to impact the decline rate, I think that's what the one just released in August may do. So we'll come along, but medications will help. There's not a cure. Excuse me. Another, I would call it a really important concept, is that dementia and Alzheimer's are not just memory loss. Everyone focuses on memory, but the reality is this is global thinking decline. This is impacting multiple areas of the brain. Abstract thinking, telling time becomes difficult, or relating to what year it is or the passage of time. Motor skills, ability to, amongst other things, dress yourself in the morning, brush your teeth over time can be impacted. Perception, you may have heard this, but people as they decline with Alzheimer's or other dementias often will see a rug on the floor and walk around the rug. They're perceiving that rug as a hole. A belt on a chair is often in nursing homes perceived as a snake, and people are afraid of, so our perception changes. Ability to language, ability to report, ability to communicate your thoughts changes. I think the best example of this that I can give you is that people lose the ability to report pain, for example. They can no longer say, my shoulder hurts. So when you're, trying to help them put their shirt on and they're in pain, but they can't, the language skills are not there anymore, it leads to some of the behavior that we'll talk about in a bit. Attention, one of our programs shows this lighthouse. And, normally if you are focused on a task, you are, you're at work and the phone's ringing here and there's music on over here and somebody walks in the door over here, more or less, think of this lighthouse beam as focusing on your task. Alzheimer's and dementia impacts that. So when the phone rings, the attention's over here and then someone walks in here and then something is happening over here. Think of this, I love the image of this lighthouse beam just kind of going all over the place. People lose this ability to pay attention. Judgment is impaired, what's safe and what isn't, and which can lead to accidents and falls, and of course, memory. Really important concept that we try to get across. This is not just memory. The other, I have about two more important concepts here, and then we'll shift gears a little bit. There are stages of Alzheimer's and dementia, and in general, I think you've heard these: early stage, middle, and late stage. I like to add normal thinking. Some people in the professional community have a problem with the word normal. Myself, I like it. Their argument is that what's really normal, none of us, we all have different types of thinking, so are any of us really normal? What I mean by normal is not impacted by, deficits in this pinwheel here. In general, people are, living on their own, going to work, they're able to drive, they're functioning in life and in normal societal ways. Or said another way, there are no symptoms. Think of early stage as mild symptoms. Think as middle stage as moderate symptoms. Think of late stage as severe symptoms. So someone no longer able to do a task like brushing their teeth, that's kind of a severe symptom. Someone word finding, like, what's the word I'm looking for? And we all do this, I certainly do it. Or, kind of starting to forget people's names, or I know my own dad had, on occasion, someone would say something, well, at this particular event, and he would say, I have no memory of that. So, that might be mild or early stage. Middle stage tends to be where, I would make these generalizations. Early stage, you as an individual might be aware or might be worried that something is not right, or like with my grandma, like every once in a while, like, well, that was kind of odd, or that these are the early stage things. By the time, you know, the recipes can't be done and the finances aren't, you know, accounts are being overdrawn, or medications aren't being taken, basically, I think what a lot of, in my world, what a lot of people think of as early, oh, this is the first time we've noticed it. We're already well on our way to middle by the time it's observable. Late is really, you know, think of late as inability to live on your own or function without somebody else helping you. So the overlay to this with Alzheimer's disease is that your path between these stages will go up and down over time, but over time it will decline. So we call this in our training, fluctuating gradual decline. What this means is, and we will hear this all the time, but how can it be Alzheimer's? How can it be dementia? She was fine last weekend when I visited her. He seemed just fine. There were no problems when I called him up, and that may be, but next week maybe there will be. So this is this up and down. It's, you know, yes, there are days, there are bad days, but over time, if you looked, you know, from the holidays to holidays every year is a time when families tend to really notice, you know, we're gathering this year, maybe not due to COVID-19, but normally, you know, you're gathering, you're coming home, you live, you know, not in the city, and you see people, and because you're not seeing them, family members or friends on a daily basis, and, you know, not seeing this gradual decline, oftentimes families really kind of freak out over the holidays because the change just appears to be so great. The reality is it's been happening pretty slowly, and there are good days and bad days. So I'm going to play a video. This is called The Hiccups of Alzheimer's Disease. This is the wife of, I think he was a pediatrician in San Diego that we filmed, and she talked about these hiccups. So I'm just going to have to reshare this, and then we can talk about this a little bit. Oops. And can you please, someone shout out right away if you can't hear. Well, if I could find it. No. One moment. It's over here. Well, still not showing up. Let's see what I can do. I can do it this way. Here we go.
My husband loved music.
Can I just ask, can people see that?
Yes, and hear it too. It's good.
Okay, very good.
Ever since the diagnosis, I found there are some hiccups. It was like a stutter, a hiccup, and it's not as smooth as before. He need to think, he need to search in order to play smoothly. So that is what affected his music. Can I do command print? Command print? I find very often with computer, he should be as good as I am, but it's greatly regressed. It's constantly, how come my computer was like this? How come my computer is black? How come that particular screen disappeared? How can I get it back? How come it magnifies so many times? What happened to my picture? My picture is so dark. How can I brighten it? So those are the questions that he kept asking and asking. He was as good as I am. The next thing is talking. He need to search for the word. Like he said, you need to take that with you to shower. You need to take new one to shower. Of course, I understood what he meant. He meant towels. The towels are in the washer, in the dryer. You need to take new ones. But he cannot search for that word, towels. I would say about an hour later, out of the blue, while we are having lunch, and he would say, towels. I want you to bring towels up to shower. So those are the hiccups in our life. Okay, so I got face towel and towels for my shower.
Yes.
All right, we got it straight.
So let's do a little Q&A here. I'm going to go back to this screen, thinking about what she just said. Where would you guys, what do you think? Normal, early, middle, or late? Where would you put this guy?
Middle?
Middle.
Yeah, I'd say middle.
Between early and middle.
Middle,
Early to
yeah.
middle.
I would put him squarely in middle. I mean, think about it. He was this, I mean, she didn't say it, but he was this pediatrician who ran a unit in a hospital and now searches for the word for a towel and can't figure out how to get a screen back up. You know, those are not mild symptoms. Those are moderate symptoms. He's still functioning. He's still eating. He's still, you know, she, in another video, they do quite a bit of yard work together and everything. But I would put that squarely in middle stage myself. Okay.
John, was he aware that he had Alzheimer's?
You know, Greg, that's a good question. I think he was aware that issues were going on. In another video, she says, you know, you want me to play the piano, you have to give me the music and the notes. He was so good, he could just play anything from memory, and he sounds good now, but it's nowhere near as good as he used to be. I just, you know, you have to believe that he's aware of that. That said, one thing I've said many years about Alzheimer's, people get pretty freaked out about Alzheimer's disease. I don't want to live if I'm going to be like that. You know, take me behind the barn and shoot me, you know, words like, things like this. The reality is there's nothing we can do about it. And what I say to people is, yes, that's true and I understand it. But working with this content over 25 years, I've developed personally this kind of sense of peace with Alzheimer's and dementia. You know, of course, I hope I don't go down that path. But if I do, at some point, I think you do become less aware. So back to our chart, I think no doubt, you know, these early changes, when you're no longer, you know, when your recipe flubs up for the 4th time, I think you're aware that something's happening. At some point, though, that awareness does dissipate, or at least is reduced. Whether it had happened with him, he's probably right on the cusp, you know, I would say.
Okay.
All right. So what she doesn't talk about, and I should have maybe put another screen in here, are kind of behaviors that are very typical with Alzheimer's disease. She talks about some, you know, but more common, not being able to come up with the word for towel, or being frustrated with your computer can be frustrating to a family member. But I tell you what's really frustrating to a family member or a care provider is what is typically called challenging or difficult behavior. We refer to it as dementia-related behavior, so as not to put the blame on the person, we put it on the dementia. Dementia, you know, the person is not their right self. This is the impact of this disease, which is causing these dementia symptoms. But behavior that is very, very common are things like yelling, you know, arguing, screaming, biting. There's not a nursing home employee that cares for someone with dementia that has not been bitten many times. You know, spitting, public urination, these are the things, and they're not, you know, the person is not to blame. This is the disease, but the behaviors are very, very frustrating for families. Repetitive questioning, you know, it'll drive you to drink. You just want to, like, you want to throw up your hands. And families in particular, you know, here's this person that you've known your whole life and this has started to happen. It's just really hard. I think that the towel we can deal with. The computer screen we can deal with. Yelling and screaming and kicking, I think that's a lot more difficult to deal with.
I'm going to get back.
Okay, sounds good. Talk to you later. Love you too.
I'm going to get dinner at 30.
Okay, bye-bye. Sorry about that. So that's the difficult stuff. So the question always is what to do about this behavior, what can we do, or what is the approach that we can take when memory loss is an issue? So that's this CARES approach. When we developed our main training, which has now expanded over 15 years, we wanted a framework. These projects were large, nationally funded by National Institute on Aging projects that brought together national expert teams in the model of the VA. That I kind of learned this big national expert team model at the VA, and I brought it over to the CARES program. There was a clinical nurse specialist who really encouraged us to think about what she called the framework, something you can hang content on that we can teach people, and then they can apply it in any area of care that they would like. It was really, talk about abstract. That was abstract even for me, and it took about a year of this national team working together to come up with this approach. But here's what we have. This is an approach we can use with anyone, at any person with dementia, at any level of decline, in any situation with any behavior. Think of it as this total approach. Okay, let's walk through. C, connect with the person. I'll say more about that in a bit. A, assess behavior. This is not assessing how well the person is doing brushing their teeth. This is assessing what behavior is going on while they're brushing the teeth. This is not assessing, during communication with a family member, how this, that, or the other is going. This is really looking at the behavior and getting a sense for what does behavior communicate. One of our foundational points in the training is behavior is a form of communication. You want to know what someone is communicating, look at their behavior, and not to compare people with Alzheimer's or dementia to other more common things in our life. But you look at a teenager with behavior, that's giving you attitude. That's communication. I've come to, and it sounds odd, my dog, when she's acting really weird, and my head is behavior is communication. What does she need? What does she want? You're with a coworker and you're getting these weird nonverbals. It's behavior and it's communicating something. So this step is looking directly at the behavior of the person, okay? Then we respond appropriately. We look to see if our response works. If it does, great. If there's something to share with others, other family members or care providers, this is a strategy for Mrs. Jones. She really loved to, go to the state fair every year. And so let's talk about the state fair. That will help make blah, blah, blah. If you're evaluating and what you're doing is not working, this is not successful, instead of trying something new, this response, back up to connect. We're going to take a deep breath. We're going to put down the task and we're going to start to connect over again. And then we're going to look at behavior. And it's only when I can't stress stress the importance of these two steps. It's only when you've formed some sort of a connection and made sure that the behavior is communicating that all is well, all is calm, that we can go into the task or you know, the respond appropriately area. That's the main approach. I'm going to show you a couple of videos. We're going to look at this in practice. Before I do that, any questions or comments on this so far?
Hi, this is Johanna, and my husband Wayne is here with me as well. Wayne, want to say hi? Hi. All right.
There.
I have to jump on another Zoom, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But I found this to be very, very interesting. John, you're an excellent presenter, and your life's work matches well with your warm and kind of engaging personality. So thank you
Thanks
for
so much.
sharing. Thanks for the
Thank
work
you.
that you
Listen,
do.
if you want to catch the rest, this is up. It'll be up on the website later tonight.
Will
So
do.
thanks so much.
Yep,
No,
it was
this
just
is
wonderful,
been
and
a long
and
time.
I appreciate everybody's interest in something like this, because it does change. It does change the makeup of families and friends and the such, but it can be a journey that is filled with a lot of joy as well as angst. So thanks very much.
You got it. Have a good night.
Yep.
And I am as long-winded as most of our speakers, so we're right at 5:30. So I'll try to whip through the rest of this. And if people need to go, they can go. Kirk, if you need to go, you can reassign the meeting over to me or Chrisanne, and we'll go from there.
I'll be fine.
So this is the approach. Whoops. I would make this, so a big part of our programs are filming. So we film these actual care interactions. We go into nursing homes and assisted livings in people's homes. We get permission from the family to film, and then we film the person. We film the common approach. We film the CARES approach. And the common approach direction is do this particular task how you normally do it. And then let's learn the CARES approach in about as long as I've just presented it to you. And let's go back and film again. And you guys, these before and afters are, they're crazy. I'll show you one here today, but I have 15 years of them. One other thing I wanted to say about this approach, nobody connects, nobody assesses. People, employees, especially nursing home, assisted living, home care, we have a task to do. I have 10 people to care for. I need to get everybody up into the bathroom, into the kitchen, or to the dining room for breakfast. I'm in a rush. Greg is helping me with the other 10 people on the other side, but he has to go to the bathroom or take a break. Now I have 20. People are in a rush, and they don't take even 30 seconds to connect or look at people's behavior out of maybe necessity. So one of the big things our programs really encourage is, instead of going right for the activity, really slow down a little bit and try to hit these two. Okay, so in 15 years, filming in 25 states, I had never, and I should underline, never filmed a common approach and CARES approach where the CARES did not significantly improve the outcome of care. Every time I have filmed these things over and over again, the CARES approach always is better. So let's look at, I'm going to show two videos here. This is a resident named Marianne. This is her care provider named Sita. And Sita's job today is to get Marianne to the shower. All right. Again, let me know if you cannot hear this.
How are you?
Okay.
Can I walk with you?
Sure.
Hey, how about us go take a shower?
Oh, no.
Huh?
No more.
Yeah, let's walk down to the shower room and take a
No
shower.
more showers. I'm going to catch a cold if I take it anyway.
Really?
Well, I took one already and already.
That's not true. That was last week.
That wasn't last week. That was this week.
No, but you take a shower every day, don't you?
Well, I do it when I feel like it.
Oh, I see. So you don't feel like it now?
No. Cold
Come
out.
on, let's go. Let's go.
Cold
We're
out.
going to take a shower now.
Cold. No showers. No showers.
Okay, okay.
And I mean it too.
All right.
Catch it cold and get sick and
CETA did nothing. I mean, I would say this is care that occurs 1 million times across the country every single day. We have a job to do. We have to get her shower. The family wants her, you know, why isn't her hair washed? Well, we tried to give her the shower, but she didn't want to get, you know, all of this. Marianne, CETA, the aide, was pleasant enough, but, you know, had this job to do. Let's look at the CARES approach. Let's look at a different way that this could have been handled.
Are you going to help me make some coffee over here?
Well,
And
yeah,
some toast?
if I can have some.
Sure. You can get some.
Marianne was a busy homemaker and likes to help in the kitchen. On most mornings, CETA, the aide, assists Marianne in the kitchen with the morning snack. Knowing that Marianne should bathe today, CETA decides to take advantage of this time when Marianne is content and well connected with her. Later, you'll see how CETA guides Marianne to the bathroom without mentioning a shower.
You got to make sure it's all clean, huh? Okay.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
So true. That's very true.
CETA realizes that Marianne is concerned about the dirty counter, so she responds by giving her a minute to wash off the counter before they continue making the toast.
She's got to clean the counter first. You want to open up the bread? Can you do that?
CETA knows that Marianne is able to do most of the steps herself, so she prompts her along the way. Keeping her involved in the activity makes it more meaningful and enjoyable for Marianne.
You can put the toast in here now. Put 2 slices in here. You want to open up the jelly? Are you going to have that now?
Yeah,
All right.
kind of hungry. I haven't eaten since last night.
Oh, okay.
CETA can see that Marianne is enjoying making and eating her toast. This has been a great way to connect and build trust with Marianne. Marianne seems very content, and CETA decides this would be a good time to walk with her down to the bath area.
Good enough, it's going to get thrown anyway.
Yeah. Okay. You ready to go for a walk with me now?
Yeah,
Let's
like
go.
to walk.
If I tell you something, my legs hurt a lot.
Oh, do they?
Uh-huh.
Well,
Sometimes I gotta walk really slow. Sometimes I gotta run like crazy.
and sometimes I'm all right still now.
Let's go around the corner here.
I haven't had any problems with my legs.
You never had any problems?
No, so that's why I said I'm still good enough for running, you know.
I know. Here, can we go in here a little bit? I want to show you something.
My kids always tell me, Mom, you gotta cut down a little bit.
I know. Here. Now, what do you think about this?
I don't know, what is this?
This is a bathtub.
CETA was much more successful getting Marianne to the bath area using this approach. After chatting for a few more minutes, Marianne agrees to try the bathtub.
You just sit down here, you take your clothes off, you sit down here, and you fill it up with water, and it's like having a really, really...
CETA should share with the team that Marianne can get upset at the mention of a shower out of the blue. Be creative and make use of activities that you'll be doing with Marianne during the day when she feels comfortable with you, to transition her to a personal care activity like bathing.
You know, a lot of people, a lot of the professionals we train say, that's great, yes, much better care, but I don't have time for that. And what I say is, look, your job is to get CETA bathed or showered. You know, one way works and is faster, is slower, a little slower. One way doesn't work and is frustrating. So, you know, I would say if you have people in your life, John, your friend, you know, think about slow patience, you know, making those connections, not really focused on something that has to be done that minute. Of course, this is different for professionals, you know, for professional caregivers. It's their job, but you can avoid so much of that negative behavior, of the dementia-related behavior, just in your approach. I say all the time, I say to administrators, what we're trying to teach are the teeny tiniest little change in the way your staff provide care. teeny tiny changes lead to huge benefits and reduction in behavior. And I tell you what, Marianne did not hit Sita. But had Marianne wound up and slugged Sita in the chin, I will tell you what happens. Sita goes to the nurse and says, Marianne hit me again. And the nurse says, calls the doctor, puts Marianne on an antipsychotic medication, and Marianne is in bed and zoned out for 2 weeks. This is what happens all the time. It's not bad. It's certainly not good. It just is the way that it is, but it is so avoidable. So I talked about the importance of connect. So really what you saw with Marianne was this connecting and waiting until the behavior signaled that, Marianne was happy and comfortable and ready to go before trying to go down here to the bath activity. I have another example, but I will forego that example for the moment. I had one more thing I wanted to say. It's a rough disease, especially for families. I think there's a professional distance that occurs if you're working in the industry and you're caring for people. Yes, it might be hard and the person might be having a hard day, but in the end of your shift, you go home to your family and your friends, and you have some semblance of a normal life. Having gone through it 4 times in my family with 4 different family members, man, that is not always true. It can be just really, really hard. And not but and what I noticed or have noticed with family members is these circular arguments that people keep getting into. No, that's not what I said. Why did you move my keys? Well, on and on and on we go. When that really is, it's out of frustration, which I understand, not helpful though. If it's sort of this total change in how you relate to other people. What I said last week leading up to this meeting was, this is a great approach for people with dementia. This is also just a great approach. This is a great approach for your boss who can be a little crabby sometimes. This is a great approach for your teenager, as I said before, or your kids. This is just a great approach in how to relate to other people in general. So that is about it. This is my shameless promotion. Our programs are $99. Bundle any 2 and save 20%. So we start with Dementia Basics, where a lot of the slides today were taken from. It's 4 hours. It comes with the certification. If you know anyone in the healthcare industry working with aging, I would sure appreciate a referral over. Our other programs are in the areas of advanced safety, one that really does a deep dive on behavior, activities of daily living, which are, eating and bathing and mouth care and going to the bathroom and showering and whatnot, end of life care, elder abuse prevention, serious mental illness, hospital care, and then one whole program devoted just for families for dementia care at home. And it really, unlike the others, it's really focused on safety issues at home and how to make the person more safe. But all of these, back to that framework idea on the CARES approach, we introduce it in basics and we go all the way through. CARES approach is applied throughout all of these. So anyway, that is my presentation and happy to take questions.
Great presentation, John. I learned a lot, and I was thinking about Seda, the employee, about how much nicer the end of her shift must be to go home and not have that built up stress of trying to combat clients
Yes.
or patients all the time.
Yes.
Sometimes you hear people say, I think they say Alzheimer's instead of Alzheimer's. I've heard different pronunciations, so.
People even in the professional community will pronounce it differently. On the East Coast, I tend to hear it like an ALTZ, Alzheimer's, a little more. But the common pronunciation is just ALZ, like ALS, ALLS, Alzheimer's would be the common pronunciation that I hear from almost everyone.
Okay.
Can you, John? Oh, this is Karen. Can you
Hey, Karen.
recommend, first of all, is your program for family members appropriate at the early stage when the family is trying to come to grips with what's happening to their loved one, and is she safe, and can she continue to live by herself, and just the struggles that family members go through, some of whom may see it one way, others might see it a different way.
Yep. Thanks for the question. Yeah, there will be, and certainly this occurred in my family, different family members have completely different takes on what's going on. Some will think this is, they will see it for what it is. Others will be in complete denial that it's occurring. But, to answer your question, the program is most useful with the highest impact early on. So yes, very appropriate. But when you think about it, if you even learn this approach early on, instead of suffering through years of decline, getting in constant arguments. I mean, what I like to say is, look, if I can stop the arguing, if I can just stop the arguing between a couple, or father, son, mother, daughter, mother, son, whatever, I can stop that. Oh my gosh. That's worth $99 very easily. Like just that, what it brings to the relationship. And Vicki just saying something, a comment on, when you said Sita's going home happier at the end of the day. We say that all the time as well. Look, what kind of a day do you want to have at work? And what kind of a day do you want to have with your family member? You can have a regularly argumentative, frustrating, like exasperating day, or you can make some small changes in your approach and have a better day. So, but Karen, your question, yeah, perfect for early stage. What happens is people don't have the skills to care for or deal with the frustration. And one day something happens, it gets too much, and that's the end for families. We have to look for a long-term care solution because I can't do this anymore. So if we learn the skills early on, that can be prolonged.
John, can you go back a slide? I just would like to see what those classes are that you have. Yeah. And then people can.
Oh, thanks, Chrisanne. Yeah, sure. Karen, did you have a follow-up, or John?
Yes, with the technology of the classes, the programs, is it possible for multiple family members to view it simultaneously?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's, you can do these programs on your phone, on an iPad, on a computer. So if you have people gathered around a computer, that's certainly one thing. The other thing you can do, we wouldn't say this for our professional community, but for families, we do allow, do a Zoom and present it and go through it together. Okay. That's no problem. We really, when we sell this program for families, we think about selling it to the family, not to one person. For our professionals or organizations, we're more the per user licensing fee.
Got it.
And also for families, we do cut the price in half to $49 for just that program if you do not want certification. Families, sometimes family members want, it's like Red Cross, CPR. You get a certification. What does it mean? I don't know what it means, but it's pretty cool to put the card in your wallet. For some people, it does mean something. And we have families that buy it with certification and without. So it's either $49 or $99.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate very much being able to hear and participate with this. I am very intrigued with the both, I'm thinking about both the basics and the dementia care for families
For sure.
described.
Thanks. Yeah, it's just the website down here at the bottom, and then just it's that middle box for individuals or the family one that you would click on. I also wanted to say my email address is down here. It's just jhobday and then at hcinteractive.com. And if you guys have any kind of confidential family situation that you want to talk through, I'm happy to set a time up with you and do a Zoom with you and your family or whatever. No problem. I do quite a bit of that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if you buy a class, can you repeat the class? Can you hear it again, or it's a one-time?
Thank you, Chris. And so for the professional programs, the $99 is 10 days per program. And the reason we limit to 10 days is that in the beginning, we kind of had unlimited use, and people didn't get through the program. You have until next spring or next summer. This week's issues will come up. The other thing though is we were really being taken advantage of. Back to the Rotary principle, is it fair to all? We'd have, a nursing facility who might buy a single license for $99 and train their whole staff. That would not fall into the fair for all category. So we limit to 10 days per program. The family members for John and Karen is a 30-day license for that particular program, because we know families are a different situation. What other questions? Greg, go ahead.
I have to unmute myself. John, could you go into a little bit of what we can do to prevent it? Certainly, ourselves
Yes.
developing Alzheimer's. I have had students over the years who take the foreign language class specifically because they want to try to avoid dementia.
I will tell you what the Alzheimer's Association would say, and I think I said a little bit about this on last week's call. Alzheimer's Association would say what's good for your heart is good for your brain. Certainly we've all heard, do a crossword puzzle on a regular basis, pick up a foreign language. Those are great, but also get out for a walk, watch your cholesterol, make sure your pulse is low, watch your blood pressure, all of those things. Any heart healthy diet is, according to the Alzheimer's Association, and kind of a dementia brain related. It's the best preventative, in fact, many people would say, that we currently have. There's a lot you can do simply with personal choices that a medication at this time will not resolve. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, and a follow-up question. You mentioned you have 4 people in your family. Is there a genetic composite to this?
Luckily, on 2 different sides of my family, and one person was an aunt by marriage. So the aunt by marriage, there is a genetic component, but I don't know if they were all on one side and all directly in the same path for me. I'd be more worried. The general rule of thumb is if a sibling or a parent had Alzheimer's or dementia, you're at an increased risk. If any other relative, grandmother, grandparent, aunt, uncle had it, you are at no more risk than the general public in general. So it's siblings and parents you have to be more concerned about.
Thank you.
Is my understanding. What else?
John, this is so fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Is this as prevalent in the US as it is around the world?
I have, again, thanks, Stephanie. I have long wondered about this. Like, I have personally wondered, is there more prevalence now than there was, 50 years ago? it sure doesn't seem like growing up in a small town where you kind of knew everyone, my own example, that there was as much prevalence as what I see today. Is it something in the water? Is it the plastics that became so widespread that weren't used previously? Is it, I mean, who knows? And yet, if those, if widespread use of plastics somehow, just as a silly example, or fluoride toothpaste, or, I mean, these are things that people will say, is it the fluoride in the water or fluoride in the tooth? If these things, you would expect certain areas of the world where plastic containers or fluoride in the water would not be as common to have lower prevalence. And in general, prevalence is fairly equalized. Again, I'm not the expert on this, fairly equalized across the world in all areas. There was a fascinating study called the Nun study. It was this Our Lady of Good Counsel order. I think the closest one is in Mankato, but as an order, the Nun, the entire order, all of these convents around the country and the world agreed to take part in an Alzheimer's study, and I should know the research institution, and I don't, so I apologize. However, they made such an interesting study group because they all lived a very similar life. They had built-in meditation in the form of prayer every day. They, in generalized terms, all went back for advanced degrees late in life. It is not uncommon for a nun to go back for a third master's in her 80s. They had similar diets. They had similar, they went to bed at the same time. They got up at the same time. They had meaningful careers as typically teachers, et cetera, et cetera. So they made this really unique, when we're studying a population, we want people to live as very closely as possible so we can compare to other groups. And what it turns out is one of the big findings was, these women were living well into their hundreds with very little outward sign of Alzheimer's and dementia. However, part of the study that they agreed to was to have their brains autopsied upon death. And upon death, approximately 50% of the nuns, even into their hundreds, had the physical signs. Remember that beginning slide with the physical changes of the brain? They had the physical plaques and tangles, if you've heard those terms before, of Alzheimer's disease, but they didn't have the outward appearance of it. Why? It's such a fascinating study.
Wow.
Is it the meditation? Is it enough sleep? Is it a low stress life? Is it? I mean, back to our recommendations on, living a less stressful, active life with good food and not a lot of junk food and not too much of this, not too much of that. So good life of moderation, but yeah, really fascinating study.
John, I do have another question, but are we getting too late?
I'll stay around as long as people want to. Go ahead.
I'm interested to know, so you said siblings and parents. So is there an age component? So like if someone saw, someone's parent was 60, would 60 be kind of the trigger age for the family to think about?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Absolutely. There's this whole line of thought that really prevalence was it's no worse than it was. My comment about 50 years ago, it didn't seem like people, there were as many people with Alzheimer's or dementia. Well, one good reason for that may be that, average life expectancy was 70 and not 86 years old. And the longer people live, the more, age is the number one predictor of Alzheimer's and dementia. The older you are, the more prevalence. I've seen rates of up to 50% over the age of 85. So over the age of 85, you're, flip of a coin, 50-50, your chance of having Alzheimer's disease or other form of dementia. So when everyone, my grandfather died at 69. That was just a normal time to die. That was, that was not, it might have been a little early, but it was not. My other grandpa, I think, lived to 76 and he was kind of old, is what kind of the thought. Today, both of those ages would be really young. You know, not that people don't die in their 50s or 60s or 70s, but with so many people living into their 80s and 90s, it just feels different. So, but age is definitely a component. You guys, thanks for this opportunity. Chris Ann, thanks for suggesting it. I went kicking and screaming,
John.
but I
Learned a
loved
lot.
it.
I know it. I learned a lot. Well, and Steph and I, our dad died of this. I mean, you know, this information would have been great to have, and your classes. I mean, I just imagine it just would have been great. It would have been helpful for our family.
Mhm.
And I have
So
a
to know that
question,
it's here.
but I don't want it to be on Facebook Live.
Oh, Kirk, yeah, why don't we kill up Facebook if you are there?
Yep, 1 second.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording as well.
Okay, thanks.